want to be clear that I did not set out to be anyone's hero. I set out to offload 400 kilos of mineral dye, collect my dock fee, and be back on the Kareth corridor before the quarantine flags went up. I missed that window by about 11 minutes. Tells you exactly how fast the ash fever moves, and exactly how much of my life has been decided by 11 minutes. Kareth 7 is a waystation, not a town. 6 buildings, 2 of them cargo bays, one of them a combined commissary and bunkhouse that smells permanently of boiled grain. Arguments. The authority posts a quarantine flag and you don't leave. That's the rule. I've been running this corridor since before the waystation had running water, and I have respected that rule every time it applied to someone else. I found her in Bay 4, on my second morning, locked in. I was doing what I always do when I'm grounded against my will. Walking the perimeter of my ship in the dark, counting rivets, cataloging every small mechanical failure I'd been ignoring for 6 months. Bay 4 is adjacent to my berth. The door was sealed per quarantine protocol, and when I overrode it to check on the mineral dye, which I had overpaid for and was not leaving unattended, she was sitting on a crate in the back of the bay, straight-backed, watching the door like she'd been watching it for some time. She was small, sandy gold skin, the color of the canyon walls at midday, and eyes that were large and silver gray, and entirely without panic. She wore what had been a ceremonial cloth of some kind, layers of sun-bleached fabric with old embroidery at the hems, and she had her hands folded, in her lap in a very deliberate way. The way you hold your hands when you are trying very hard not to be invisible, and also very hard to remain so. She was Varani. I knew that much. The Varani are the people of this canyon system, and they communicate. The children especially, through a language of hand positions and resonant hums that takes their own adults years to learn. I do not speak it. I speak corridor standard and a little trade hethery and whatever profanity is locally current. I can tell you the going rate for mineral dye in 6 systems. I cannot tell a Varani child that she is safe. I tried anyway, I said, or standard. Hello, I'm not going to hurt you. What are you doing in my cargo bay? She watched me. I said the same thing, slower, as though that would help. She watched me do that too, with an expression that I can only describe as patient. I went and got my water canteen and my ration pack, and I set them down on the crate in front of her, and sat on the floor, put my eyes more or less level with hers, and I waited. She looked at the canteen. She looked at me. She made a sound, a low, resonant hum in her chest, and held up one hand with 2 fingers touching her thumb in a shape I didn't recognize. I held up my hand and tried to copy it. I got it wrong. She corrected me, moving my fingers with both of hers, very gently, until the shape was right. Then she hummed again and pointed at the canteen. I unscrewed the canteen and held it out to her. She drank. That was how we started. The authority notice came that afternoon. All non-infected occupants of the waystation were to move to the north building for consolidated quarantine. The bay would be sealed. Contents, cargo, equipment, any stray animals would remain sealed for the duration. I read stray animals and understood what they meant and felt something go quiet and hard in my chest. I did not move to the north building. Instead, I slept on the floor of Bay 4 and spent the next 2 days learning. She was a patient teacher, which surprised me. Most children are not patient with the very stupid. She would make a gesture. I would attempt it. She would correct me without any visible frustration, and eventually I would get close enough that she would hum the confirming tone. The confirming hum was low and warm and settled in the bones of the chest in a way I had not expected. By the end of the first, I found myself listening for it, the way you listen for an engine cycling back into rhythm after a rough patch. I learned. Water, I learned. Not leaving, I learned. Morning, because she greeted me that way each time I came back from checking the ship's seals, both hands raised to either side of her face like something rising. I learned a gesture that seemed to mean safe, or perhaps shelter, perhaps the same thing. The distinction may not exist in her language, or it may be that she was teaching me what she needed to hear most. The ash fever takes about 6 days to become obvious, and another 4 to settle its argument with you, one way or another. On day 3 of the lockdown, I started running the numbers. The authority would hold the quarantine for 14 days minimum. The child's people, whoever had left her here, for whatever reason, whether flight or mistake or worse, We're not coming back through a quarantine. Seal. She could not stay in a sealed bay indefinitely. And she could not go to the north building, where 3 people were already coughing. Ship has a medical cabinet. My ship has sealed atmospheric cycling. My ship has, if I am being honest, spent more of its career smuggling things past quarantine lines than through them, and the seals are very good. I told her, using the 6 words I had learned, and a considerable amount of pointing, that we were leaving. She studied my hands for a long moment. Then she made a gesture I hadn't seen before. She touched her sternum with her fingertips, then extended the hand toward me, palm open. I didn't know the word. I guessed at the meaning. I put my fist against my own sternum, and then opened my hand the same way. She gave the confirming hum. The quarantine cordon on Kareth 7 is a sensor ring, and 2 authority officers who had been there as long as I had and bored out of their skulls by day 5. I know both of them by name. I know one of them by the particular rate he charges to look the other direction on manifest inspections, which I mention only because it is relevant to understanding the character of this operation, and not because I intend to implicate anyone in writing. I know where the sensor gaps are. I know where they are because I put them there, 11 years ago, in exchange for a very generous arrangement regarding inspection schedules. I carried her on my back through 300 meters of canyon rock in the dark, and she did not make a sound, and I did not let go. I got her to the Virani settlement at Kareth Outer by borrowed land runner. The settlement elder was a tall woman with silver hair and the careful hands of someone who has negotiated difficult things before. And she looked at the child and then at me, and then back at the child, who made a long series of gestures I could not follow. The elder's expression shifted into something I couldn't name. She spoke to me in corridor standard. She said, "She says you learned her words." I said I'd learned 6 of them, the elder said. For the Virani, that is not a small thing. Who learns your words is a person who has decided you are worth understanding. I didn't have anything useful to say to that, so I said the girl needed water and food, and probably to see someone who knew what they were doing. The elder said that would be arranged, shook the elders' hand, and I left. I am writing this from my bunk, which is where I have been for 3 days now, which is longer than I usually stay in one place. The cough started this morning. I know what that means. I have been running this corridor long enough to know what that means. I am not sorry. I want to put that plainly, before I lose the inclination for plain speaking. The math was simple. I am 54 years old, and I have hauled mineral dye and grain stock and occasionally things I was paid not to describe along a route that will run exactly the same without me. She is small, and the canyon is her home, and there was no one else in that bay who knew 6 words of her language. I learned 6 words. It turned out that was enough. I have been on this run for 19 years, and I have sat down in 100 waystations, and I have never once stayed longer than the dock fee covered. She is the only cargo I have ever carried that I did not charge for. I think that is the right note to end on. I am going to sleep now.